Reginald here. I've been doing a series of tier lists for Havoc 40 melee weapons. Today I will be doing Veteran. All the notes from my previous videos still stand, so go watch those if you don't know what I mean. Let's talk about the Veteran, shall we? The Veteran's kind of in an interesting position in Havoc 40 with really needing good mobility tools in order to survive in certain situations, but also kind of having mediocre melee skills unless you're taking Weapon Specialist. As a consequence, there's kind of a dividing line for him on what's good with Weapon Specialist and what's good otherwise, and I'm gonna have to talk to that as we go along. But as a general rule, the knives are S tier on Veteran, and that's mostly because they are safe weapons with decent time to kill on everything. It's sometimes slower than you would like, but mostly it provides you solid safety. The dueling swords are going to stay where they belong in the broken tier. Next up, I'm just going to go through the veteran specific ones. We have the shovels. Now there is a good shovel and a bad shovel. The good shovel is basically in B tier, kind of mid horde clear to low horde clear, but does struggle a little bit with breakpoints in Havoc. Still a really strong weapon in Havoc. I've seen people use it to good effect. The other shovel is not good, so we're not going to be very impressed with it. I guess niche value, if you want to use it, it's not D tier. The normal sapper shovel, I think you can put in C tier. However, it is very niche to use and suffers very badly into armor mobs, which is exactly the kind of thing you run into trouble with. It's basically for safety only and mobility and defensive use, and honestly, I would probably recommend not using it. I think I'll just stick it in D where it belongs. The Mark 12 chain axe is still bad. Thank you for attending my super short TED Talk. The Mark 4 chain axe I think has niche value on Vet, but is still not good on Vet. It's basically only a Zealot weapon if you're going to be using it, and I don't know. I wouldn't probably run it unless you really like it, which I do, but again, we're talking about what's good in Havoc. These are weapons that are all perfectly good in Auric, and in fact, the Mark 12 chain axe is really quite good in Auric. I'd probably rate it an A, whereas the Mark 4 chain axe I'd also rate it an A, but I would rate it as better than the Mark 12. So it's kind of weird how much the Mark 12 falls off in Havoc. Okay, Chainswords. If you are running a weapon specialist build, this is an A tier weapon. If you are not, this is a B tier weapon. I'm going to put it in A because you're probably running weapon specialist. But if you're not, just remember, you actually want the other chainsword. In which case, that's A for you. This is, again, sort of one of those weird situations where what you're benefiting from is the weapon. It has good fast swing speeds by default, good defensive mobility, and the ability to reach out and touch armor in a way a lot of other weapons can't with those shreds. But it does have an opportunity cost and skill floor to use those shreds in order to get value out of them, so you really have to be attentive to that. The swing pattern on the Mark II is better for slower swing speeds because you get more heavy attacks into the horde clear combo, which results in better stagger results and generally good clears. The Mark 13G is too slow with its light combo to actually stagger things reliably in a messy situation. And so what happens is you tend to get hit unexpectedly. You're not paying quite as much attention, you're not dealing quite as much stagger, and you're not swinging fast enough to keep everything pinned down, and you get slid in the ribs in the middle of your combos. I'm gonna dump the Tacaxes back where they belong, because once again, these aren't any good. I'll put the shock mauls back in C. Again, these are niche safety stick tools, kind of like the shovels, and I would say in some ways they're maybe better than the shovels, but some ways they're worse. They just, again, they don't output like tons of damage, but what they do output is good stagger, which can be really useful for mobility sake and the need to survive certain situations, but ultimately that's not what you want to bring weapon for, right? So you're not buffing the team with this thing, and you're not protecting yourself effectively, and its special attack is really niche to use, so it's better, generally speaking, to not bring it. The Catachan Swords belong back in D tier. There is a niche use case for using the Catachan Swords on Veteran, which is the parry. However, that's so incredibly niche and so difficult to justify that honestly, I'm not going to strongly recommend it. This is one situation where these weapons are pretty decent, like B tier maybe on Auric, but are just never worth taking into Havocs. And the Tacaxes are also really strong and good, and they're also never really worth taking into Havocs in my experience. So I've done my best to be specific there that I don't think these are bad weapons in general, I just think they're bad into Havoc. Okay, the power swords I think have to land in A. I need to explain why the power swords and the chain swords are sharing A here, and I apologize for that. I want to put them in S, but they do have some downsides. Specifically, they have mobility downsides pretty bad. So they're down bad on mobility, but they're up big on output, and so I'm going to consider that a wash in favor of them being an A. Compared to the chain swords, they are way better weapons, and that's just like blanket statement. So Chainswords are like the far bottom end of the A category for veteran, but there aren't a lot of choices that he has. So you're kind of like, they're not B tier choices. They're not that bad. They do have a skill floor. They do have some struggles, but you can crit build them. You can get a lot of value out of them. You can get good cleave out of them. They're decent choices. The power swords are just way better, right? But the power swords are a lot less safe than the knives, and that's why they're in A tier instead of S tier. Again, the criteria I'm using here is S has little to no downside and lots of upsides. What's the downside on the knife? Not much. You can definitely get away with uncanny strike kills on carapace. The power swords have bad mobility. Incredible upside of huge damage, being able to kill lots of targets, but the mobility will get you killed sometimes. So you have to be really good at the game to take advantage of these weapons' upsides, and that's really why they're in A. The same thing is true of the Chainsword. There's a lot of downsides, but you can get some pretty good damage out of those shreds, and they do good damage into hordes and good clear times with weapon specialists and so on. So they're not bad weapons, but they're worse than the power swords by a lot. Okay, I've belabored that long enough. The Rashad has to end up in B, and I'm going to explain. The downside on the Rashad is that on Veteran, it's really hard to get the breakpoint you need to get to make it good with brutal momentum on one hits into bruisers and stuff. And so because of that, in Havoc 40, this weapon is sitting in B for Vet. Now, I want to be really clear here with the combat axes. They're all really close together in terms of power, but the finesse on the Rashad is what makes it really good. And it's actually an S tier weapon in every other game mode other than Havoc. Rashad is super strong. Go use it. If you haven't, you'll see what I mean. For that same reason, we're going to drop these down. You know what, they probably could just land a B. They're practically the same weapons, so we'll just do that, and that's good enough. Okay, what else is there here? I may have missed a weapon. I just feel it in my gut. I didn't grab the heavy swords. Let's talk the heavy swords. Heavy swords, again, B, but these are solid choices, and I think the Mark 10 is the better choice here for Veteran, because you're going to probably be bringing a weapon that can kill carapace, whether it's crack grenades or shredder grenades or just your gun. Then you don't need the heavy sword for it. But what the heavy sword brings to the table is some really solid upside niche value into horde clear and decent mobility to boot. It's a good defensive tool into armor because of its stagger and so forth. Not against crushers, mind you, and maybe not even maulers, but it's decent. It's really good into maniacs too, so solid choice, especially for weapon specialists. If you're not using weapon specialist, it's still a solid choice. I ran it on an executioner's build in Havoc 40, and it was a really nice rescue me right now choice. I was actually using the Mark 10 because I was like, I'm just doubling down on the horde clear option, and it worked. I think it's solid. Okay, that's it for Veteran. I hope you've enjoyed this little tier list guide on Havoc 40 weapons, melee specifically. I will eventually get a chance to do ranged weapons as well, and when I do, I will eventually build a basic gestalt video for all of the weapons' relative balance in the game. I hope you had some fun. Warm regards.
Reginald.
I would like to take a moment to express my genuine and significant gratitude to Bonehead for becoming my first Oath Taker level member. Your support really does mean a lot to me and has made it so much easier for me to continue to justify the amount of effort I pour into this channel. I'd also like to thank Miles Williams Lewis and Joseph Davison for supporting my channel through my Adept level membership. Your atypical support really means a lot to me, and I appreciate it. I'd also like to extend a thank you to the rest of my members. Support helps the channel a lot. If you would like to become a member of this channel, there is a link in the description below and a join button next to the subscribe button. Thank you all so much for visiting. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.